All right, diving into some thought-provoking stuff today. We're looking at Ayaan Hirsi Ali's book, Prey, full title, Prey, Immigration, Islam, and the Erosion of Women's Rights. We're going to pull out some really fascinating bits of information from it.
It's a controversial book for sure.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And our goal here isn't to agree or disagree with everything she says, right? But just to see where the evidence and the cultural insights lead us.
It is interesting how Hirsi Ali starts the book kind of painting this picture of Europe.
Yeah.
That might surprise some people. I mean, she describes arriving in the Netherlands in '92,
Okay.
and she was just like shocked
Mm.
by how freely women could move about.
Mm.
Totally different from her own experiences.
And then just a couple of decades later, she's like, whoa, wait a minute, the sense of safety, it's eroding.
Yeah.
And she links this to mass migration from Muslim-majority countries to Europe, saying that it's contributing to a rise in harassment and even assault of women in public.
You know, it's worth remembering that getting solid data on this issue, it's really a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, underreporting is common, and official stats alongside some statistical trends does suggest, that we need to take a deeper look.
She doesn't shy away from the numbers.
Yeah.
Hirsi Ali, that is. She cites this 2018 survey where 55% of European women said that they'd experienced sexual harassment. I mean, that's a pretty big number, right?
Absolutely, it's significant, but it's important, I think, to understand that these surveys, they're valuable tools.
Yeah.
But they've got their limitations.
Of course, yes.
I mean, the way you phrase a question, the context, all of that can influence how people respond.
Yeah.
So the data is concerning, yeah.
Yeah.
But we got to consider those nuances.
Okay, so we've got this sort of complicated picture starting to emerge here. A possible rise in harassment, data that's inherently kind of tricky to wrangle.
Right.
But Hirsi Ali goes beyond just the statistic. She digs into what she sees as the cultural stuff that's going on underneath all of this.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really really interesting, I think. She brings up this concept of honor culture. And argues that a lot of these young men who are arriving from Muslim-majority countries are coming from societies where controlling women's behavior in public, it's paramount.
Okay.
It's all about protecting family honor.
She uses a kind of a striking example, I thought, in the book to make this point. She talks about how in these cultures women are kind of categorized as like either modest or immodest, based on their dress behavior, whether they've got a male chaperone even.
Yeah, all those factors.
And what's kind of unsettling is that she's saying that immodest women, they're seen as like justifiable targets of harassment or even worse.
And it's really important to emphasize here, we're not talking about stereotyping entire cultures,
right?
But to understand these societal norms, these things that are just so deeply ingrained, it's crucial if you want to get a handle on the potential for values to clash.
Yeah.
When you've got large scale immigration happening.
It leads to a point that I think often gets kind of missed in these conversations. She argues that the West's failure to really address this cultural clash,
right,
it's actually hurting the migrants' chances of integrating successfully. It's kind of fascinating because it's not just about protecting women in the host country, but also it's about thinking about the long-term well-being of the migrant community itself.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. This clash, right? This cultural clash, it can lead to all sorts of negative perceptions of the whole migrant community. I mean, that fuels anti-immigrant sentiment, makes integration harder, and could even, push some people towards more extreme views.
Yeah, vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And she brings in some real voices to drive this point home. The story of Mustafa Panshiri, an Afghan-Swedish ex-policeman, I thought was really interesting. He's dedicating his time now to helping young migrants adjust. And he's observing that, a lot of them are just like deeply frustrated by the behavior of some of their countrymen because it's undermining the very freedoms that they came for.
Yeah, it's a tragic irony in a way, A lot of these individuals, they risk everything to come to the West, hoping for a better life. And then some of their own cultural norms end up being a barrier
Yeah.
to achieving those very aspirations. I mean, it's complicated
Yeah.
for everyone, really. She kind of takes on what she calls the integration industry. She's really critical of some organizations and individuals claiming that they've got a vested interest in this crisis,
Mm.
like in it continuing.
Yeah.
Because their funding and their influence, it depends on it.
Yeah, she backs that up with some concrete examples. Points to the Dutch Parliament's findings from the early 2000s. They basically concluded that despite uh, billions of euros poured into integration programs,
Wow.
there weren't any like clearly identifiable successes.
Which raises I mean, that raises a really tough question. If well-intentioned efforts aren't working, what are the alternatives? I mean, are there actually effective ways to bridge these cultural divides? Well, Hirsi Ali, she suggests that we need to start by just being honest, move beyond simplistic explanations, and
She's willing to engage.
right, engage in dialogue with both successful immigrants and those who are struggling. It's about understanding the nuances of each person's experience within this big societal shift.
Now we can't avoid, can we? The elephant in the room here,
Right.
the Cologne attacks. Hirsi Ali links the harassment of women in public to this phenomenon that she calls tahrish-gömme.
Now, tahrish-gömme, which she describes as this coordinated form of sexual assault by groups of men. I mean, it's become a really politicized term.
I bet.
So we got to be careful here. It's important to keep the facts separate from the interpretations, all the agendas, that sort of thing.
Okay, so let's focus on the facts then. What actually happened in Cologne?
So between 2015 and 2016, New Year's Eve celebrations, hundreds of women reported being sexually assaulted by groups of men described as North African or Arab in appearance, and the scale, and the nature of those attacks, as documented by multiple sources. I mean, it can't be ignored.
These attacks in Germany, especially the ones in Cologne, it feels like it was a real turning point. Hirsi Ali goes on to describe these other cases where she feels like the legal system's kind of failed to protect women,
No.
or to hold the perpetrators accountable. Like she highlights some instances from Sweden and Austria where young men who were convicted of rape or assault got like incredibly lenient sentences, community service or a small fine.
Yeah, I mean, those cases raise these really tough questions about the balance between cultural sensitivity and actually upholding the rule of law. How does societies how do they weigh the rights of the victim against the rights of the accused, especially when you've got cultural differences in the mix? It's a delicate balancing act, for sure.
And it feels like these sorts of issues, they're feeding into the rise of all these populist movements across Europe. Hirsi Ali, she suggests that when mainstream institutions just fail to acknowledge these concerns, right,
Yeah.
or even address them, people are more likely to kind of drift toward those more extreme viewpoints.
Yeah, it creates this sense that the establishment, they're out of touch with the everyday realities and the concerns of ordinary people, or even worse, that they're deliberately silencing anyone who dares to speak up.
Yeah.
And that can lead to this real breakdown in trust,
Right.
and just fuel more division within society.
She talks about even attempts to gather data on these types of crimes they're often met with resistance. Like she describes her own research team encountering all these obstacles when they were trying to access crime statistics in Germany. It almost seems like there's a deliberate effort to keep this information hidden.
Well, it's important to remember. I mean, a lot of European countries, including Germany, they've got really strict privacy laws.
Yeah.
And those laws, they're there to protect individual rights, but sometimes they can make it hard to understand and address these bigger, broader societal issues. So it's about finding that balance between individual privacy and the need for transparency and accountability.
She argues that it goes beyond just data, though.
Right.
She claims that there's this culture of denial, especially among what she calls the European establishment, and she kind of lays out what she sees as their this playbook of denial. It's a bit unnerving, frankly.
Yeah, one of the tactics that she points to is reframing the issue. So instead
Oh,
of instead of focusing on what the perpetrators did, the conversation shifts to accusing anyone who raises concerns of being racist
right.
or xenophobic,
Yeah.
and that can really effectively shut down any kind of meaningful dialogue.
Yeah, it's like you can't even admit that there's a problem without being labeled like, intolerant or bigoted.
You got
And she says that this silencing, it's happening everywhere. The media, academia, even in politics, people are afraid to speak openly because they're worried about the repercussions, whether it's, damage to their careers or reputations or even, loss of funding.
And the irony is, as you said earlier, right? This silencing probably just makes things worse.
Right.
I mean, problems fester when they're not addressed openly, and that can really fuel the very anti-immigrant sentiment that everyone claims to be so worried about. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. By avoiding these tough conversations, we actually risk making those tensions worse.
Right. Yeah.
The very tensions we're trying to ease.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, here's where the book takes this really interesting turn, I think. She shifts the focus to the migrants themselves and makes this pretty thought-provoking claim that the West is failing these migrants by not really preparing them for the cultural differences they're gonna encounter.
Which brings up an important question. What does effective integration actually look like? Are we doing enough to really support newcomers as they try to adapt to the values and the norms of Western societies?
She points out that a lot of migrants are coming from countries where the relationship between individuals and the state, it's totally different
Mm.
from what they find in Europe. It's often, it's a relationship based on fear, corruption, and this deep-seated mistrust of authority.
Yeah, I mean, imagine
Yeah.
imagine coming from that kind of environment to a place like many European countries, where the police are generally seen as protectors. The legal system is at least theoretically fair and impartial.
Hmm.
And you've got this emphasis on individual rights and freedoms. It's a huge shift in perspective.
And she argues that a lot of young men, in particular, they arrive with these really different ideas about about masculinity, female sexuality, and what's considered acceptable behavior from women in public. She even suggests that the leniency of the Western legal system,
Yeah.
in some cases, can be misinterpreted as weakness.
Right, of course, that in no way excuses criminal behavior,
Okay.
but understanding the context that someone's coming from, right?
Yeah.
The cultural context, can be helpful in figuring out why their actions might be completely unacceptable in their new society. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing the challenges of adaptation
Mm.
and the potential for misunderstanding.
Again, she backs this up with real life examples. Like Mustafa Panshiri, the ex-policeman.
Right, yeah.
He talks about how a lot of young migrants are just they're bewildered
Yeah.
and frustrated by the actions of some of their fellow countrymen because it clashes so dramatically with the freedoms that they came looking for.
It all comes back to that idea of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
The actions of a few individuals within the migrant community,
Hmm.
they can unintentionally harm the group as a whole,
Yeah.
and create barriers to opportunity for everyone.
One of her most powerful points, I think, is this emphasis on honesty. She really believes that we can't truly address these issues if we're constantly, tiptoeing around them out of fear of causing offense.
Yeah, that honesty has to come from both sides, right?
Yeah.
From the migrants who are adapting to a new way of life, and from the host society that needs to be clear about its expectations,
Right.
while also enforcing its laws consistently.
She argues that this culture of avoiding those honest conversations about cultural differences, all in the name of tolerance or political correctness, it can actually be more harmful than helpful.
Absolutely. By shutting down, open dialogue, we actually stifle any opportunities for real understanding, and we just allow those problems to fester
Oh.
unaddressed.
So what does she propose as a solution? She lays out a pretty comprehensive plan, and some of her recommendations are definitely going to raise some eyebrows. One key point that she emphasizes is the need to enforce existing laws more rigorously,
Mm.
particularly when it comes to deportation.
Yeah, she believes that the current system, where deportation is, it's often threatened,
Yeah.
but rarely actually carried out. It sends this message that the consequences for breaking the law, they're minimal.
She even uses this term deportation fiction to describe it. It
Hmm.
creates the situation where individuals might think they can act with impunity because they don't think there will be any real repercussions for their action.
It's a controversial stance for sure. But her argument is that for a society to work,
Right.
right, to function properly, it has to uphold its laws
Yeah.
consistently.
Right.
Otherwise, the whole system just it loses its legitimacy
Hmm.
and its effectiveness.
And she's not just talking about criminal behavior though. She argues that integration needs to be this two-way street.
Right.
It's an active process. Migrants should be expected to learn the language, understand the culture, respect the laws of their new home. It's about mutual respect and responsibility.
Yeah, she's critical of those she calls coasters,
Yeah.
individuals who come to Europe and just rely on the welfare system without really trying to contribute to society. And this is where you can really see her own personal experience coming through, right?
Hmm.
As an immigrant who worked hard to integrate.
Her point is that this passive acceptance, it can actually hurt integration. It creates this sense of dependency
Yeah.
and isolation, and can breed resentment on both sides.
Yeah.
Successful integration, it requires active participation and a sense of shared responsibility.
And that's a view that's shared by a lot of successful immigrants, actually. Those who've really integrated into European society. They often talk about the importance of clear expectations and a firm commitment to shared values. It's just crucial elements
Yeah.
of successful integration.
Now, this next part is where things get really controversial. Hirsi Ali, she advocates for a much stricter vetting process
Mm.
for potential immigrants. She believes that those coming from cultures with very different views on gender equality and women's rights, they should face more scrutiny.
This is a really sensitive topic. There's no doubt about it. It raises all sorts of ethical and legal questions. But her argument is that if a society wants to preserve its core values, it has a right to be selective about who it allows to join.
She even goes so far as to say that certain cultural practices, like forced marriage and female genital mutilation, should be grounds for denying asylum. This is where the tension between universal human rights and cultural relativism, it really comes to the forefront.
It's an incredibly complex issue. No easy answers. But Hirsi Ali, she's not afraid to dive into those difficult conversations. She knows that that her views are gonna offend some people, but she believes very strongly that these are the conversations that we need to have if we're gonna actually address these challenges effectively.
It's about acknowledging that pretending that these cultural differences don't exist, or silencing the people who point them out. It's not a solution. It's just sweeping the problem,
Under the rug.
under the rug. Exactly.
Yeah, honest and open dialogue, even when it's uncomfortable. It's essential if we want to find common ground.
Yeah.
And build a future where diverse communities can actually coexist peacefully and respectfully.
So what does this honest dialogue, look like in practice? She offers a few concrete suggestions. One that really struck me was this idea of mandatory sex education for all children, regardless of their cultural background.
Right. Which goes back to her point about equipping migrants with the knowledge they need, right, to navigate the cultural landscape of the West. I mean, a lot of young men, they're arriving from these more conservative societies. They've had very little, if any, sex education, and may have very, very different views on relationships and what's considered appropriate appropriate behavior.
She argues that comprehensive sex ed in schools could help bridge that gap
Hmm.
and prevent misunderstandings that can sometimes lead to harmful actions. So by fostering understanding and open communication about these sensitive topics, we can hopefully create a safer and a more inclusive environment for everyone.
Controversial proposal, and it would definitely face some pushback,
Yeah.
from some communities. But her point is that if we're serious about integration, we need to be willing to address even the most challenging cultural differences,
Hmm.
especially the ones that clash with those fundamental values
Yeah.
like equality and respect.
And she has some pretty radical ideas about how to achieve this. She even suggests, uh, sending young men who've engaged in harassment or assault back to their countries of origin, not as a punishment, but as this form of cultural education.
It's definitely a thought-provoking concept and a controversial one, for sure.
Yeah.
Logistically, I mean, it'd be incredibly challenging to implement. But she's trying to make a point that sometimes experiencing the lack of freedom, the oppression that exists in other parts of the world, can make you appreciate the values of a more liberal society
Hmm.
in a way that no lecture ever could.
And she's a really strong advocate for the power of personal stories.
Yeah.
She believes that hearing from those successful immigrants, the
Yeah.
ones who've made that transition and really thrived, it can be incredibly valuable.
It's about finding role models,
Yeah.
right? Sources of inspiration. These are individuals who've navigated the cultural divide and shown that integration is possible
Mm.
without without having to abandon your identity or your values entirely.
And she's really critical of what she calls the integration industry, claiming that a lot of these organizations and individuals, they're more invested in maintaining the crisis than in actually solving it, because their funding and their influence depends on the problem continuing.
It's a bold statement for sure,
Yeah.
and it's important to acknowledge that there are a lot of people working in the field of integration who are genuinely dedicated to helping migrants succeed.
Right, but her point is that there's this risk of creating this system where some people benefit from the very problems that they're supposed to be solving,
Hmm.
and that can lead to a lack of accountability and resistance to implementing any kind of meaningful changes.
And ultimately, that can hinder progress and make it harder to find lasting solutions. It's crucial to make sure that the efforts are focused on achieving genuine integration and empowerment.
Yeah.
Not just perpetuating a cycle of dependency.
One of the recurring themes in this book, I think, is the impact of all of this on women's freedom and autonomy. Hirsi Ali, she talks about how women in some European cities are increasingly changing their behavior, avoiding certain areas, dressing more conservatively, and just generally feeling less safe in public spaces. It's like their world is shrinking.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
it's a subtle erosion, but it's a real one. Of those freedoms that women in the West they've fought so hard for, and we have to just take for granted. It's a real step backwards.
And she argues that this is a trend we need to pay attention to, very close attention. When women are being forced to retreat from public life, it signals a serious problem within a society. I mean, it raises questions about who we are and what we stand for.
It makes us ask ourselves, what kind of society do we want to live in? One where women feel safe
Hmm.
and free to move about however they please, or one where they're increasingly limited by fear and cultural pressures. And this isn't just about women's rights. It's about the health and freedom of a society as a whole.
And that really gets to the core of the questions that Hirsi Ali is raising.
Right.
It's not about it's not about picking sides or demonizing entire groups of people. It's about having those honest, sometimes difficult conversations about how to deal with these really complex cultural issues in a way that protects the rights and freedoms of everyone involved.
It's about, it's about finding a path forward
Yeah.
that acknowledges the challenges, respects diverse perspectives,
Yeah.
and ultimately strives to create a society that's both inclusive and safe for all its members.
It's not just about, physical safety though.
Right.
Hirsi, she's worried about something deeper, this potential erosion of those social norms, the values that have allowed women in the West to achieve these levels of equality and autonomy that are just frankly, unheard of in a lot of other parts of the world.
She makes this really kind of chilling comparison, I thought, between modern Europe, that dystopian society of Gilead, in Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. Now, obviously, she's not saying that that Europe's on the verge, but
It's about, recognizing how these seemingly small compromises made in the name of, tolerance or diversity can kind of gradually chip away at the very foundations of a society and eventually lead to these unintended and potentially really harmful consequences. It's that slippery slope argument, right?
Yeah, it is thought provoking. She backs it up with these historical examples, pointing to how women's rights have been rolled back in other parts of the world, like Iran
Yeah.
or Somalia, and often very quickly with devastating results.
It's a reminder, I think, that that progress isn't always a straight line. The rights and the freedoms that we enjoy today, the ones that we often take for granted, they're actually quite fragile, and they require constant vigilance and defense.
Speaking of taking things for granted, one of the things that really struck me about this book was Hirsi Ali's own personal journey. She's been a vocal critic of Islam for years, and has faced death threats, constant accusations of bigotry and Islamophobia. I mean, it takes a certain kind of courage to speak out on these issues, knowing what you might face.
She's definitely a polarizing figure. There's no doubt. But what I find interesting is how she uses her own experiences, both the good and the bad, to kind of inform her arguments. Like she talks about arriving in the Netherlands,
Right.
and just being like blown away by the freedoms that women had, freedoms that she had never even imagined, and that experience clearly it had a profound impact on her.
Yeah, and she's equally
Yeah.
open about the challenges that she faced as an immigrant.
Yeah.
The discrimination, the cultural clashes, the struggle to find her place in this new society, and that firsthand experience, I think it really adds something to her voice, a kind of rawness and authenticity.
It's clear that she's speaking from this place of deep personal conviction,
Yeah.
not out of hate or prejudice, but out of this genuine concern for the future of both Europe and the Muslim world. She's arguing for a future where both can thrive, right? But she believes that future depends on this, honest confrontation with these tough hills.
Exactly. She argues that real, genuine integration, it requires this willingness to adapt and to change on both sides. It's not about it's not about erasing cultural differences. It's about finding a way to live together peacefully and respectfully, while still upholding those core values that make a society free and open.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? How do we find that balance, honoring cultural diversity, while also protecting the social fabric and the rights of all citizens.
It's a question that's only going to become more and more pressing as migration continues to reshape the demographics of Europe and the rest of the world. There are no easy answers, and I have a feeling this debate it's gonna continue for a long time.
But Hirsi Ali's book, I think, as controversial as it is, it forces us to really wrestle with these issues
Yeah.
head on, and to think critically about the choices that we're making, both as individuals and as
He
societies.
challenges us to really consider, the long-term consequences of our actions, the ones that we intend
Yeah.
and the ones that we don't. Prey is a challenging read.
But it's an important one.
It is. It is. And whether you agree with Ollie or not,
Right.
her book is a valuable contribution.
To the ongoing and often heated debate about immigration, integration, the rights of women.
In a world that's changing rapidly.
And we hope this deep dive into Prey has been insightful
I think it has.
and has sparked your own curiosity
Yeah.
about these complex issues.
And we encourage you to seek out the book. Read it for yourself.
Form your own opinions.
It's a book that will stay with you. And it's sure to spark some lively discussion. So thanks for joining us.